I think I've only got 3 more cups. Hold on. Mr. Clay, and, no, I'm fine. 1 second. Sounds great.
I would love to try your tea.
Please let me know what you think.
It is delicious.
Only grows here. We've been tending this garden for generations.
You're drinking dead people tea?
Aren't we all?
That's very true. But you're like cultivating dead people for good tea.
Aren't we all? Please let me know, what can I do for you? Usually when people come here, it is because of some great tragedy. How may I alleviate your pain?
Oh, well, Herr Clay, we come to you with a great tragedy.
We recently lost one of our friends. And we
Who come here usually have.
we aren't here to bury him. He's already in the ground. But we've come to avenge him, and we were hoping to find some help.
This is a place where we take the dearly departed people who have done well and people who have lived good lives, and we put them into earth that has been touched by the Wild Mother, and in turn she grants them with beauty and splendor and sometimes tea. Honestly, I don't think I've really had enough experience to have an opinion on that. I'm a good gardener.
What do you grow other than dead tea?
I grow lilies, I grow Mushrooms, moss.
Mushrooms. Dead moss.
Yeah.
You don't leave here very much, do you?
It's been a while. I wasn't, I've been on my own for a while. It makes you get a little, rambly. Have you ever been in nature? Yes. Violence is extremely natural. Somewhere there's a plant that needs some compost, and I'm happy to make some more. Make people happy.
Okay. There we go. We've got a stream. Holy cow. And of course, right as the stream is up, I have to go log my kids into their computers. But I'll be back in just a moment. Okay. For real this time. I had forgotten how many chapters there were in this book. Vale! Thank you, Vale. I hope the break does me good as well. And I figured, you know what? Like, streaming with the kids at home is going to be hard, but not insurmountable. And I'm like, yo, if I can't have YouTube, then I need to have this. Chapter 23. I deserve something, damn it. Chapter 23. Mako led them down the street and Chapter 23. Mako led them down the street and off to a side alley until they encountered a tall gutter where a large gap led into the sewers below. He dropped to the floor and slithered into the opening like a... That SL, though. And slithered into the opening like a serpent. Eben felt a moment's trepidation, but Theron followed the bodyguard without pause, and after a moment he did the same. He dropped 2 paces to the floor and landed easily enough, and then he reached up beside Theron to help Caleb, for the boy's legs did not reach nearly so far into the darkness as theirs. Though they were beneath the streets, the fading light of day still did much to illuminate the way before them, for it came through the drain holes and bounced from the light gray stones that formed the walls. Thus they were able to make their way quickly to the west, where Gregor had been spotted. Eben was grateful that this part of the sewers had platforms running along the water. The last time he had gone beneath the streets, there had been no such walkway, and so he and Mako had slogged through the muck. Now he still had to smell it, but he did not have to feel it sinking into his boots. "How do you know where you are going?" said Caleb. Mako did not even glance at the boy. "The sewers form a vast and intricate labyrinth. That is how Yeren could be so busy within them without my knowing it. They are even more vast than the streets of the city itself, for there are many levels built atop one another, and each level stretches as far as the island. But there are different areas, and any who spend much time down here learn to stay close to their own territory. We rule all the levels to the northeast. The Yerens have claimed the second level to the west, and I know we are going west because of the compasses." He stopped at an intersection, and Eben and his friends skidded to a halt behind him. He went to the right-hand passage and stood tall, placing one hand on the top of the tunnel. There Eben saw an N had been drawn. He looked across the way and saw an S drawn over the opposite tunnel, and just above him was an E. The way they were going, a W had been scratched. They were dug shallow in the stone, but unmistakable all the same, if one knew to look for them. "Clever," said Theron, sounding impressed despite herself. "That is one thing you should always keep in mind, children," said Mako. "Scholars and those who write books often hide knowledge in pretty phrases and dust-covered parchment, for they wish to have it all to themselves and thus earn the worship of the common folk. But those who build and make and do,
They make knowledge as plain as they can and put it in plain sight, hoping to help others who come after. The artisans who built these sewers wanted them to be useful, not mysterious. Yet they hold a mystery nonetheless and conceal many dark deeds besides, said Eben, thinking of Matami. Makosh.
Can I help you? You want to chat?
Yep.
Okay. I know I just got started, guys, but I'm going to take a quick moment to chat with my wife, because, believe it or not, I'm rather fond of her.
Plus, I've got good dance moves.
That is not even on the list of factors of why I'm actually going to take a break. It's not a dance-off fail. I am not participating in this whatsoever. I'll be right back.
Everything's telling me that I should stick around and see where you're headed. I think that's where I'm supposed to be. This is pretty good from a certain perspective. I mean, you think about it, bad things happen to people every day, and then you have a bunch of people who care about you so much that they come and save you, fix it, defeat a great evil. I mean, nothing this good ever happens. This is great.
Really? I mean, people aren't good. That's not how this works. I mean, things that you do are good or bad, but people are just people.
What a dick.
Wait.
talk. A lot.
When they're grieving.
Yeah. And you listen a lot. I don't know much, but I know people. And I know things that aren't people. There's a lot more, apparently, and,
You seem to pick up on the stuff that's not said.
I mean, you have to.
There, not yet removed from the cross, whether it be by luck or superstition, there is the white snow dappled, multicolored coat of Mollymauk tea.
Something will be here.
What did you just do?
I made the earth remember him. Something will be here. Well, it's more than a thank you. I feel that you have to be free, so that you can finally pay your debt.
This is me paying my debt.
No, this is you hiding from your debt. You're a man who is afraid of what you owe. I understand. That's okay. This is not your debt. Your debt lies elsewhere. I know these things. think perhaps it's destiny. You believe in destiny?
No.
But you dream about islands and you go to them.
Really back this time. Hey, what's up, Miak? Hey, Bodegazilla! Oh, thanks for the sub! Appreciate that. Now, Miak, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I do love my BRBs. Especially my BRBs. BRB for the BR. Sure, sex is great and all, but have you ever taken a really great shit?
Mako shrugged, his wide smile growing cruel. Well, they may have intended one thing for their creation, but they bequeathed it to us, and we have made of it what we wish. Enough philosophy for now. We are moving too slow.
That SL, though. Have you ever taken a really good shit? Mako shrugged.
We are moving too slow. We are moving too slow. He stalked onwards, and they had to run to keep up with him. Mako did not relax his pace, no matter the distance they covered, and not even when he stopped them and led them down an iron ladder built into the wall. Theron seemed to have no difficulty matching his strides, but soon Eben and Caleb began to flag, wheezing and huffing as they stumbled along in the now dark passage. "Hurry yourselves, gold shitters," said Mako, growling. "Yeren may have defeated me once, but they will not rest easy this night, and have likely already sent for more guards. The longer we take to reach them, the harder the fight we will find waiting for us." "I am doing my best," said Caleb, who was panting even more heavily than Eben. "Only I am not used to such exertion." Theron and Mako snorted in unison, and then gave each other an uneasy look before pressing onwards. It was not so long after that before Mako stopped in his tracks, holding up a hand for the rest of them to do the same. Eben pressed himself against the wall, as did Caleb, but Theron stepped up beside Mako, body tense, eyes peering eagerly into the darkness. "Silence your huffing and heaving," Mako whispered. "I am trying to listen." "Do you want me to stop breathing entirely?" said Caleb between gasps. Mako glared at him, and Caleb's mouth snapped shut.
Merry Spookmas.
Thanks for the sub, Rhea. I appreciate it. Merry Spookmas. God bless us, everyone. He and Eben did their best to still their heaving chests. At long last, Mako stepped forwards again, the tension vanishing from his posture. "It is one of mine. We need not fear, at least not yet." He led them on, and in a moment a shadow detached itself from the wall and came towards them. "The wagon has pressed on," said a voice from the shadow. Eben thought it sounded familiar for some reason. He peered closer. Beneath the hood was a woman, the same woman he had encountered on the streets, who had saved him from Gregor. She glared at him with her one good eye for a long moment and then frowned at Mako. "What is he doing here?" "Do not worry about them," growled Mako. "Only tell me where the wagon has gone." "West, the same way they were headed," said the woman. "I think the witch left it at some point, but I did not wish to draw too close to make sure." "Of course not. Well done," said Mako. "Now return to the surface. I will doubtless send you a message soon, and you must act quickly when I do." "I can stay," she said fiercely. "Let me fight."
but suddenly her body gave a shudder, and she slumped against the wall. Eben saw that one of her hands was pressed tight to her side, and he saw a dark liquid staining her fingers. "No more battles for you tonight," said Mako. "Do as I say, or I will give you a bruise to go with that scratch." "Then at least we would match," she said, and grunted out a pained laugh. She held forth a hand, and she and Mako seized wrists before drawing each other close for a one-armed embrace. Before she could go, Eben took a step forwards. "Thank you," he said, "for saving me. The other night, I mean." She glared at him. "A fool's gratitude is of little worth." Then she stepped into the shadows and vanished. "Who is she?" said Eben. "Her name, I mean. I did not get to thank her before, or I did not think of it." "She is Talib," said Mako, "and has been my pupil for many years. She has saved your skin more times than you know, certainly more than the one time you saw her doing it. Come, we are not far now." He crept forwards. Eben and Calum no longer had to struggle to keep up. But while his footsteps were quiet as a shadow, and Theron too moved muffled and silent, Eben's and Calum's steps now seemed horribly loud, and Eben winced every time his toes caught upon a crack in the stone with a scuffling noise. Mako glared back at him once or twice, and though he said nothing, Eben's face burned with embarrassment each time. But then all such thoughts were banished, for they saw ahead the orange glow of a torch, and far off Eben could hear the creaking of wagon wheels, a sound as familiar to him as his own breath. Too, there were tramping boots, and they moved quickly, not at some easy walking pace. Whoever accompanied the wagon, they knew they were pursued, and were making good time to escape. But not good enough, clearly, for the noise grew louder. Soon they saw the wagon. It rolled along with a deep rumble, pulled by 2 Yeren guards in green cloaks, holding spars that stuck out from the front of it. 3 more guards accompanied the cart, walking behind and to either side of it. 2 of these held torches, lighting the way forwards. "Fools," muttered Mako, after he had let them draw a bit ahead and out of sight. "Those torches may show them where they are going, but they also serve to make the procession easy to see. And they will not spy us until we are almost upon them." "What is in that wagon?" said Calum, eyes wide with fright. "Are they moving mage stones?" "No," said Mako. "Only supplies to feed and care for the crew of a ship that will soon launch from their hidden dock. But upon that ship there are mage stones, and Yeren means to send them out across the 9 lands. That is not our chief worry tonight, though. Tonight we hunt for Gregor and Mayap Isra." "I am more worried about Isra than Gregor," said Eben. "Yet you are not in command here, and should not even have come," said Mako, glaring at him. "Therefore your worries are of no consequence." "Well, what do we mean to do now?" said Theron. "I did not see Gregor among the guards, unless the tales of his size and strength are only exaggeration, and Isra certainly was not there." "Yet we should stop that wagon all the same."
All right, Bodegazilla. Enjoy your riding. You have a lovely night as well,
said Mako. "Anything to disrupt the family Yeren in their criminal activities is a gift to the High King." Calum nodded solemnly, clearly missing the joke. Eben rolled his eyes at the thought of Mako risking life and limb to uphold the king's law. But Mako was right in any case. To reach Gregor and Isra, they would have to get through the wagon guards. "What do you mean to do?" Mako grinned at Theron. "Do you wish to show off that magic of yours, girl?" Theron smiled in return. In a few heartbeats, Mako outlined the plan, and they ran forwards again in the darkness. When they came to the next corner, Eben and Calum stopped, while Mako and Theron pressed on. They saw a flash of light as Theron's eyes glowed, for she did not bother to hide it with the amulet, and then she burst around the corner beside Mako. The cart flipped over, slamming to the stone floor upside down, its contents spilling all over. The wheels flew off, each one striking a guard to either side. They fell with pained cries, their torches falling into the passing flow of water and waste. The guards floundered in the sudden darkness, reaching for blades at their waists, but too slow. Theron struck again, and invisible bands of force picked them up, slamming them into the wall. Their faces were pressed into the stone so that they could not see behind them. "Boys," growled Mako. Eben and Caleb ran forwards at once. The light in the tunnel increased as they reached for their magic, and then together they pressed their fingers into the stone. It flowed out and around the guards, wrapping about their wrists and ankles in bands so that they were held in place. In a moment it was done, and all three of the children released their hold on their magic. The tunnel was plunged into darkness again. They waited for their eyes to adjust to the small shafts of moon's light from above. "We should destroy their goods," said Mako, "but I would rather not throw them into the water, in case they are carried down to where our enemies await, and they are warned of our presence." "A moment," said Eben. He reached into the pocket of his cloak and produced Halab's fire striker. Mako's eyes lit upon it, and he gave Eben a hard look. "It was a gift from—" Eben trailed off, looking at the guards on the wall. They could not see, but they could hear. "Well, from family." Many of the goods were wrapped in cloth, and he tore it up to put in piles at the wagon's corners. With a few touches of the fire striker, the cloth lit, and soon flames licked up to spread along the wagon's lengthy spars. "That will do it," said Mako. "And what of them?" said Caleb, pointing to the soldiers pressed to the wall. "Do what you will to us," said one of the guards, speaking into the wall, for the stone band still pressed her tight against it. "You will not find it so easy when you get to the end of the tunnel, wretches." Mako grinned. "Let her down." Eben looked at him, aghast, but Mako only nodded. So Eben went forwards and shifted stone again, releasing the bands that held her. The moment her boots touched the ground, she turned and reached for his throat, but Mako seized an arm and snapped it against his wrist. Eben heard the sick crunch of a breaking bone, and the woman cried out. Then Mako smashed an elbow into her nose, and she fell to the ground. "Girl," said Mako, "the amulet. Place her under your spell." "What? I did not agree to use mind word," said Theron. "I would not ask you to make her kill herself," said Mako. His voice was soothing, though his hands jerked as he restrained the Yeren guard, who fought to rise. "I mean to keep mage stones out of the hands of rogue wizards. Only that, I promise." Theron hesitated, but though her eyes did not glow, as she spoke again, her voice was rich with mind word. "Stop," said Theron. The Yeren guard stopped squirming on the floor at once. "Yes," she said, her tone dead and lifeless. "You will not remember any of our faces," said Theron. "After you have left the sewer, you will forget seeing us, or that you were attacked at all." "Yes," said the guard. Theron looked to Mako. "Now what?" "Have her go to the mystics," said Mako, smiling. "Have her tell them where we are going, and that they should go there in all haste, for they will find a hefty supply of mage stones if they do." "But they will find us," said Theron, taking a step back. "If they learn what I carry." "We will be quick, and will have vanished by the time they arrive. But they will be there to clean up the mess, and deal a grievous blow to the family Yeren." Mako gave them all a look. "You, more than others, should object to more mage stones finding their way into the Nine Lands. We can do a great deal to stop it. Now, tonight." "Very well," said Theron. She looked at the guard again. "You will find the first mystic you can. You will tell them of these tunnels, and what paths to follow that will lead them to the rest of your kin. You will tell the mystics that they will find mage stones here, but only if they come into the sewers, now, at once." "Yes," said the guard. "Go then." The guard turned on her heel and marched away, back down the way Eben and the others had come. Eben shivered, and Caleb did the same. "We have taken longer than we should have," said Mako. "Onwards."
Hey, that officially puts us past the halfway mark on this book. Huzzah.
Chapter 24. It was not long after that the tunnel widened at last, and they came into a vast open space. Here the walls and floor were hewn from the earth's bones rather than built by masons, and there were many stone outcroppings all about. Mako ducked behind one of these, and the children hastened to follow. They had reached some sort of grotto, Eben saw. He could smell salt water over the bitter stench of the sewer waste, and surmised that this cavern must run out to the great bay. They had to be somewhere near the western end of the seat, he guessed, if not at its very edge. Where the tunnels emerged into the cavern was a narrow platform, and this joined a raised stone path that ran around the cave's right edge, with many guards posted along it. A fair distance away, the path ended at a wooden dock lined with torches that illuminated a ship. It was no great vessel, smaller than a schooner but wider, built for capacity more than speed. 2 masts it had, though Eben saw a sail upon only one of them. He guessed it had room for no more than 5 crew. 2 of these walked about the deck, checking lines and stowing cargo, while 3 managed workers on the dock. There were many crates, barrels, and sacks to load, it seemed, and where they were open, Eben could see that most of them were filled with small packets of brown cloth. "There," said Mako, pointing at the packets. Those are mage stones, or I am a fool. Can it not be both? Said Theron. Mako snorted. Whether in dismissal or in a quickly stifled laugh, Eben could not tell. What we see here is worth more than a king's ransom. What do you say? Shall we rob them of it? I do not want to steal mage stones, said Calum quickly. Mako rolled his eyes. Loosen your death grip upon your honor, gold shitter. I mean to destroy their cargo, not to take it for ourselves. Mage stones are a toxic good to trade, as the family Yeren is soon to discover. We did not come for their mage stones, said Theron. We came for Isra. Where is she? I do not see her or Gregor, said Mako. Either they have come and gone, or they are still on their way, and will arrive soon. If it is the latter, we would be wise to create as much chaos as we can before they come, so that they cannot muster these guards against us. If it is the former, then we have already lost their trail tonight, and should do what good we can, by which I mean, chiefly, destroying the cargo Yeren hopes to escape with. Very well, said Eben. What shall we do? I tell you again that we shall do nothing, and this time I mean it, said Mako. I have taken you farther already than I should have, and it ends here. You will keep watch. If anyone else should emerge from the tunnel whence we came, you must warn Theron and me, so that the tunnel whence we came, whence we... tunnel whence we came. Whence we came. Whence we... Whence... Tunnel. Whence... One else should emerge from the tunnel whence we came. Whence we came. Emerge from the tunnel whence we came. You must warn Theron and me, so that we are not taken unawares. Eben glared, and Calum did not look entirely pleased either, but they could feel the sand passing through the hourglass. They had little time, for the mystics would soon be on their way. Very well. How should I signal you? Squeal like a rabbit for all I care, said Mako. Only do not let them see you, and make sure you are not within reach. There is a little rocky shelf up there. There is a little... There is a little rocky shelf up there on the wall. That is where you should wait. What will the two of you do? Said Calum. We will make this a night Yeren remembers and regrets, said Mako. Come, Theron. Together he and Theron stole forwards, bent almost double in the shadows, while Eben and Calum scrambled onto the shelf. It was just above head height, with the ceiling pressing down low enough above them that they had to lie down to keep from bumping their skulls. Eben thought that Mako and Theron would take the stone path, but Mako turned from it at once. Then Eben saw that there were other stone shelves like the one he rested on, though not so smooth, so that the Yeren guards avoided them. But the stone came in levels, and all of them were lower than the stone path, so that Mako and Theron could creep along unseen. He saw them approach the first guard who stood on the path. They edged forwards until they were as close to the guard as possible, but below him and out of sight. Theron popped her head up and into the torchlight. Eben froze and almost called out, but then Theron said something he could not hear, and the guard froze. A few more hasty words she muttered, and then she ducked out of sight again. The guard set off down the path. He approached the next guard, who leaned unaware against the wall. The unwitting target looked only at the last moment, but too late, for the first guard smashed the pommel of his sword into the side of her helmet. She fell to the floor, senseless. The other guards saw it, and they called out in alarm as they came running to help. There were at least a half-dozen of them, and Eben knew that Theron's mind-worded guard stood no chance. But just as they approached, Mako and Theron struck. Mako leaped up on the path, seizing one of the guards and planting a dagger in his throat. He fell from the path and slid down the shelf into the water. Eben winced. Theron struck with her magic, seizing two of the guards and flinging them from the path. They fell screaming into the water and fought to keep hold of the rock wall as they tugged off their chainmail. Mako nearly killed another, but Theron struck again just in time. Her magic picked up all three guards who still stood and slammed them into the stone wall with the strength of dragon's breath. They fell unconscious to the floor. "Come," said Eben, sliding down off their shelf. He helped Caleb down after him, and they ran forwards to where Mako and Theron stood. Together they ran down the path as quick as they could, for the sense of passing time hung heavy in the air. The ship's crew had abandoned their vessel, fleeing for their lives down a side passage that led in another direction. "What of the ones who escaped?" said Eben. "They could not see our faces in the dim," said Mako. "The ship is all that matters now." He leaped aboard first, and the children followed more slowly, holding tight to the rope railing of the gangplank. By the time they made the deck, Mako had already gone down a hatch and returned. "The bulk of the stones are down there," he said, "but there are plenty more on the dock. It would be best to destroy them all, but that may take too long." "I can cast the crates on the dock into the water," said Theron. "No good. The crates will keep them safe, and those lying in the open will simply float. Yeren may not be able to recover all of them, but they will recover enough." "Put them aboard then," said Eben, "and we can burn the ship." Mako scowled. "Idiot. It will take longer to bring the crates aboard than it would to set them ablaze." Eben took quite some pleasure in rolling his eyes and gesturing dramatically at Theron. "We have a mind mage, Mako." The bodyguard's eyes widened, and though it looked as though he tried to hide it, a little smirk crept into his lips. Off to the side, Caleb muttered, "He means mentalist." It took but a moment. Theron's eyes blazed as she lifted the crates, for she did not need the amulet's power for so simple a task. But the last few still hung in the air when Eben heard a sharp cry and turned. There, at the other end of the cavern, two figures stood in the entryway, silhouetted by the torchlight beyond. Gregor, and beside him, Ezra.
There are a lot of little moments in my books that I like quite a bit. And that is one of them. Part 1, Eben taking the piss out of Mako for once. Part 2, Caleb going, actually.
Chapter 25. Even from across the cavern, Eben shook at the sight of Gregor. Images flashed into his mind of the Drayden assassin Gregor had killed. Next to Ezra, his size seemed inhuman. The man was at least a head and a half taller than Mako, and it seemed his shoulders were twice as broad. His legs were like ship masts, and his arms as thick as Eben's torso. "Drop that crate," Mako told Theron. "I would give both my daggers for a Firemage. Boys, find torches and set blazes on the ship. Can you stop her, Theron?" "I have..." "Can you..." "Can you stop her, Theron?" "I have before," said Theron, her voice filled with steely resolve. "I will do so now, and gladly." "I hope you are not only boasting." Mako pounded down the dock towards the path of stone. But Theron did not bother with the dock. She ran to the ship's stern and leaped from it. Eben's stomach lurched, but then her magic picked her up, and she used it to carry herself to the stone path, reaching it even before Mako did. Ezra gave a scream of rage, and a black glow sprang into her eyes. "Kill the girl!" she cried. Gregor drew his steel and advanced down the stone path. But Mako stepped forth, and the men faced each other across the cave. "You owe me more than one life," said Mako. "Now I will carve them from you like a boar." "Try it," said Gregor. Eben realized he had been standing and staring too long. He turned to seize Calem's shoulder. "Enough gawking," he said. "We have our own work to do." Calem nodded. "I will fetch one of the torches." "No, I will see to that. Use your magic upon the ship. Break parts of it up into kindling that will catch easier than boards." As Calem scuttled to obey, Eben ran down the gangplank, making for the torches. But a blow struck him just as he neared the first one, a force without sound or sight. It knocked him back, nearly pitching him off the other side of the dock. The torch he had reached for was flung from its mount, falling into the water below with a sharp hiss. "Eben!" Calem came running. Across the cave, Eben saw Ezra staring at him with her black glowing eyes, and he knew it was her magic that had nearly thrown him into the water. But though her hand was outstretched still, he felt nothing more pulling at him. Theron must have countered the spell. Calem reached him and seized his arm, hauling him back up onto the dock. Eben gave him a grateful smile before they stood together. "Get another," he said, pointing to the torches. But Ezra gave another great cry. Eben braced himself for a blow, but none came, except to the torches, which were cast down and into the water of the grotto. Now the dock was nearly pitch black, and the cavern was only lit by the torches on the stone path. Eben could try to take one, but it would bring him nearly within arm's reach of Gregor. Ezra bared her teeth in triumph, but then Theron redoubled her assault, drawing Ezra's focus. "Darkness take her," said Eben. "What can we do now?" "Mayhap the ship has lanterns," said Calem. "And you have your striker. Come, I will search below decks." They ran up the gangplank again, and Calem vanished down a hatch. But Eben paused, for he had caught sight of Mako. Gregor had pushed the bodyguard well down the path now, so that they were less than 10 paces from the ship, and Mako was hard pressed. A new bruise swelled on his face, and he favored his right arm, which was missing its dagger. The other seemed a poor weapon against Gregor's massive sword, and it seemed clear that Mako was no longer attacking, only trying to stay alive. Eben looked over the deck around him. There was an open barrel at hand, and within it he saw oranges and apples packed in straw. He seized one of the oranges, gripping it tight in his hands. Light flashed in his eyes as he felt the substance of the fruit, and then he changed it to stone. But then it was almost too heavy to hold, so he shifted some of it away to go dribbling down upon the deck. Now he took the fist-sized ball and, waiting for the right moment, he threw it. Mako had taken a quick step back, desperate for space, and so the stone came sailing at Gregor at the perfect time. It struck metal, for he wore a helmet, but it still sent his head rocking to the side, and he stumbled. Mako lunged forwards with his dagger. But Gregor recovered too quickly, and his plated fist smashed Mako in the gut. The bodyguard fell back, landing hard on the stone path. Eben shouted, turned another orange to stone, and threw it. But Gregor casually batted it away and took a step towards Mako, who struggled to stand. Theron grit her teeth and stepped forwards. Isra stumbled against the attack, and the dark light in her eyes flamed up. But Theron broke through, knocking Gregor a pace back from Mako. With a cry, she pressed still further, and Eben saw a rippling in the air. It wrapped itself around Isra in an instant, and the girl screamed as it flung her far out into the cavern, out of the torchlight and into the water with a splash. With her opponent gone at last, Theron sagged and fell to one knee. But she rose almost immediately, pushing Gregor another pace back from Mako. Eben thought she would fling him into the water as well, but she seemed winded and fought just to keep her feet. There came a commotion at the other end of the cave. With shouts and tramping feet, a party of soldiers burst into the cavern, holding torches aloft. They wore mail and carried blades along with the torches, and upon their shoulders were cloaks of red. "Mystics," whispered Eben. But just then Caleb emerged from below decks, and in his hand was a lantern. He opened one side of it, even as Eben frantically worked his fire striker, and soon the lantern was ablaze. Close at hand lay a little pile of kindling that Caleb had built. Eben smashed the lantern down upon it, and its oil spread along the deck. "It is time to go." Eben turned to find Mako standing at the gangplank. The bodyguard's face was entirely covered in bruises now, and blood from his split lip dribbled down his chin. They ran to him, and at the bottom of the gangplank joined Theron. A glance told Eben that the mystics were engaged with Gregor, who fended them off with huge, sweeping swings of his broadsword. They should have overwhelmed him already, but the narrow stone path kept them from engaging him more than two at a time. Mako hurried them towards the other passage, the one the boat crew had used to escape when they first arrived. Just before they ducked within, Eben glanced back at the ship. It was burning now, burning with a sickly black flame that rose to lick the cavern's roof. The smell of it was foul, a putrid corruption like rotting flesh or a noxious corpse. He nearly retched. Then they had gone around the corner, and the flames were lost from sight.
Chapter 25 done. Hey, what's up, Swiftness? Chapter 26. The tunnel stretched on long and dark ahead of them, and they had to slow their pace at first.
to slow their pace at first. But then Theron took the lead, and, eschewing Kekit's amulet, she reached for her power. Mage light sprang into her eyes to illuminate the way. It was a poor glow, but better than nothing, and they moved as quickly as they could. Eben heard no sounds of pursuit, but that could not last forever. Eventually the mystics must overwhelm Gregor, and then they would find this passage. "How do we know this is not a dead end?" said Calum. "Because the Yerans fled this way," said Mako. "They were afraid for their lives. They would not have trapped themselves here if there was no hope." Indeed, he proved right, for soon they emerged into another cavern. This one was much smaller, and opened to the great bay almost immediately, letting them see by moon's light. They had come out into a moon's light. They had come out into a small rocky shore that sloped steeply into the water. "What now?" said Calum, looking behind them. "There were likely boats here," said Theron, pointing. Eben saw that there was a spike in the rock wall and several lines trailing from it, but nothing was attached to the other end of the lines. "The crew must have taken them all when they fled." "That means we must swim," said Mako. "Shed anything that will slow you in the water and get in." "It is the dead of winter," said Eben. "We will freeze to death." Mako scowled at him. "We can reach the shore. Unless I miss my guess, it is just around the mouth of the cave. And if you or I stay here, we will land in a mystic prison, and the family Drayden may fall." Eben looked fearfully at the water. "I am not a very good swimmer." "Come off it, Eben," said Theron. She was already shucking off her academy robes. Soon she stood in her underclothes, but even though she must have been freezing, she did not shiver. Calum and Eben looked at each other for a moment, but Eben knew they had little choice. They had little choice. They removed their robes, throwing them into the water at Mako's command, so that hopefully the mystics would not find them, and learn that academy students had been present. Their boots they kept, for those would not be a great impediment to swimming, and they would need them to run once they reached land again. Once they had disrobed, both boys hesitated at the edge of the Great Bay's water, which looked even more frigid now. "Oh, darkness save us," said Mako. He seized Eben's shoulders and flung him in. Eben sank into the water with a yelp and nearly gasped in lungs of water with a yelp and nearly gasped with a yelp and nearly gasped.
That's incredibly annoying.
Eben sank into the water with a yelp and nearly gasped. Eben sank. "Save us," said Mako. He seized Eben's shoulders and flung him in. Eben sank into the water with a yelp and "Save us," said Mako.
How sneaky can I be with this? No, not that sneaky. No, definitely not that sneaky. All right, we have to unplug the microphone for a moment, which is fun. Check. That sounds awful, but it's okay. We'll have a good microphone back in just a second here. Check, check, check.
Save us, said Mako. He seized Eben's shoulders and flung him in. Eben sank into the water with a yelp and nearly gasped in lungs of seawater. Save us, said Mako. He seized Eben's shoulders and flung him in. Eben sank into the water with a yelp and nearly gasped in lungs of seawater. It was colder than he said Mako. He seized Eben's shoulders and flung him in. Eben sank into the water with a yelp and nearly gasped in lungs of seawater. It was colder than he could. He seized Eben's shoulders and flung him in. Eben sank into the water with a yelp and nearly gasped in lungs of seawater. It was colder than he could believe.
That sounds fucking perfect. Oh my god. I'm so happy with that. Okay. Check. Check, check. Okay. Hello. All right. I think we have the other microphone up.
He see
Thinking hard or hardly thinking computer. Ha ha ha! Oh, we have fun here. We have fun.
He seized Eben's shoulders and flung him in. Eben sank into the water with a yelp and nearly gasped in lungs of seawater. It was colder than he could believe. A moment later he felt the splashing of another body beside him. Calum, too, had been thrown in. Together they fought for the surface and hung there paddling, sucking in deep breaths of air that now seemed positively warm. Theron waded in beside them and struck out for the cave mouth. Mako was just behind her. Eben and Calum paddled after them, but were soon outpaced. "Wait!" cried Eben. Then he took in a mouthful of seawater and lost his words to sputtering. But Mako and Theron glanced back from where they had almost reached the open water. "Sky above," said Theron, swimming back. She passed Eben and went to Calum, who had fallen even farther behind. "Come on, then." He clung to her back, holding onto her shoulders with a death grip. She struck out again, and though Calum slowed her down a bit, she still passed Eben easily. They reached Mako at the cave mouth, and he glared at Eben as they approached. "I am not carrying you like a suckling newborn, boy." "I did not ask you to," said Eben, though he had meant to, and was now secretly glad he had not. They broke out into the open water, and Mako's earlier guess proved right. A sandy shore sank into the water a scant 30 paces away. Before they swam for it, though, Mako guided them farther out into open water, for the waves lapped against the stone cliffs of the seat, and though the sea was somewhat calm, still it could knock them senseless against the rocks. Eben soon fell behind again. Mako did not carry him the way Theron had Calum, but he did reach back and seize Eben's shoulder, flinging him a little bit farther along every other stroke, so that he was just able to keep up with the rest. Darkness take all useless gold shitters, growled Mako. I could not agree more, said Theron, who was now fighting against Calem's weight to keep her head above the waves. By the time they reached land, Eben could no longer feel his fingers or his toes. He fell upon the shore, expecting the air to be warmer than the water, but a wind was blowing, and his shivers only redoubled. Get up and keep moving, said Mako. You will not freeze to death unless you try to rest. But where? Said Eben. He fought to gain his feet, but it was hard when he could not feel his limbs. There, said Mako. He pointed up the shore, where they could see the glow of the western docks. There are torches for warmth, and mayhap we can steal some clothes. So by moon's light they ran on, their steps hampered by the soft sand that grasped for their feet. Mako reached the dock piles first, and by the time they joined him he had popped his head up over the edge of the wooden planks to look. There are no guards nearby, he whispered, and there is a carriage not far off that I think is unoccupied. You mean to steal a carriage? Said Calem. No, idiot. If there is a carriage, it is because someone means to take ship. But their things are still in bags atop the carriage, and there we may find clothes. Theron, look after them and keep out of sight. I shall return in a moment. He slithered up and into the open. Theron poked her head up to look after him, and in a moment Eben and Calem did the same. They saw him reach the carriage, climb up top, and pull open a travel sack. He threw it aside before opening another. This one he took up and ran back to them, avoiding torchlight wherever he could. Here we are, he said. Trousers and tunics aplenty. No cloaks, but we will not be in the cold much longer. The children hastened to don the clothing. Eben studied Mako as they dressed. The bodyguard stood stock still, with no quiver in his limbs, though his clothes still dripped seawater. There are clothes enough here for you, too. Mako sneered, and the clotted blood of his lip burst, sending a crimson rivulet forth to mingle with the saltwater droplets. I am not some weakling who is troubled by a chill. Soon they were done. They all had trousers of brown, and Eben and Theron had found tunics of white, but the only shirt that fit Calem was flamboyant red, with gold trim at the collar and sleeves. Well, this does not make me look an utter idiot at all, said Calem ruefully, holding out his arms and shaking his head. Who cares what you look like? Growled Mako. We have tarried too long. Up on the dock. And so up they went, and once they had passed the carriage and gone a little distance on, they slowed to a walk. And once they had passed the carriage and gone, they slowed to distance on, they slowed to a walk, strolling along as though nothing untoward was happening, except for Mako, who still stole from shadow to shadow, eyes roving everywhere to watch for a threat. The docks seem curiously empty, do they not? Said Calem. I had noticed the same thing, said Eben. That may be why, said Theron. She pointed ahead, where a large cluster of people had gathered. There were mayhap 200 of them, packed in a tight little group, and all facing towards the center, except for some who looked about as though seeking aid. Stay away from there, said Mako. All the better that they will not notice us. They will not notice us regardless, said Eben. They are looking at whatever is in their midst. He pressed forwards, away from his friends and towards the crowd, ignoring Mako's frustrated growl behind him. Something was wrong. He could see it in the worried faces of the onlookers, the way they kept looking about, expecting, or hoping, for someone else to arrive, to sort out whatever lay in their midst. The crowd was packed tight, but he pushed through them, and Theron was at his shoulder. Soon they reached the center, and there they froze. Eben's breath left him in a rush. Isra lay there, dead clearly, her sightless eyes staring up at the sky. Seawater had turned her skin dark and bloated, and blue veins stuck out in the torchlight. Fish had begun to peck at her cheeks, it seemed, for the skin was open, though the decaying flesh put forth no blood. Only a few scraps of her academy robes still clung to her corpulent frame. "She perished, then," Theron whispered. Eben heard a grim finality in her voice, no trace of joy, but a steely resolve, a tone like the ending of a tale. "I did not mean to drown her, but neither am I sorry. The nightmare is over." "Silence," said Eben quietly. He took her arm and Calem's, who had stepped up beside the two of them, and drew them both back through the crowd. They pulled away from the people standing there, where Mako waited with a dark look in his eyes. "Well," he said, "what is it?" "It is Isra," said Eben. "Dead." Mako's eyes shot wide, and he pushed past them to dive into the crowd. When he returned, his face was no less grim. In fact, his scowl had deepened. "She must have washed out of the grotto on whatever current was meant to carry that ship," said Theron. "Strange that she should have reached the docks before we did, but then the sea is wild." Eben frowned, but he did not wish to speak. It was Calem who looked up, fear in his eyes, and met Theron's look. "No!" and met Theron's look. And met Theron's look. "No, Theron," he said. "That is impossible. Not just how quickly she came here, but she herself. She has been dead a long time. Weeks, most likely." Theron stared at him, uncomprehending. Her gaze shifted to Eben, who met her eyes, and then to Mako, who was scowling off into the night, chin buried in his fist, lost in thought. "That is impossible," she said. "We just saw her. It was less than an hour ago, and she was as alive as you or I." Eben shivered as he looked back towards the crowd, all of them still clustered around the body. "Yet it is the truth. I have no more explanation than you do, but Isra is more than a month dead." Okay. Another hour done. I'm going to take a quick break, and then I have to find out whether I'm cooking dinner tonight. If I am, I'm going to have to come back and end off for the day. But hopefully not. In any case, back in a few.
important to follow one's feelings on such things. I commend you.
So maybe some supplies, something to buff us up a bit.
Some bees.
Some bees, yep.
I think some bees would suit you.
I just really want to see them.
You can talk to them.
I really want to talk to them.
I've talked to many bees in my time.
Really?
Yeah.
You can teach me the language?
I mean, you just, hey bees.
Hello, bees. Please come over here and let me say hello. You can talk to them? Yeah, say something.
What do you want me to say to them? I don't know.
Tell them to come over here, but don't sting us.
Hold on, let me do a thing. I think I'm coming to the realization that perhaps I was not entirely clear of what I signed up for, but I don't think that means that it's the wrong path. I'm getting used to the idea that this is going to be a test if it were easy.
I joined your group of friends, I guess our group of friends now, as a testament of faith, and it would be a disservice to that faith to turn around because it's hard. If it had been easy and I suppose I wouldn't have needed to be called to it. I've been thinking a lot about it. Jester gave me a lot to think about, to be honest.
Well, you know, sometimes acts of good faith deserve to be rewarded when they can. I wanted to give you something that will make your time with us a little bit easier, I suppose.
Mr. Caleb, do you believe in fate?
I would like to think not.
I think the world is shaping you into something important, and I want to make sure that you get to wherever you need to be.
That's a pretty big matzo ball.
Even when we're not the best of people, I feel like we're still moving towards something that's good and worthwhile. And I'm feeling the struggles in my way to bring us to where we need to be.
Welcome to the Nine.
I'm honored. I serve nature, and I'm the maker of fine graves.
Where? No, that is a humanoid jellyfish.
It's really pretty. Keep your eyes forward.
It's so sad.
Why?
It's just here and unconnected. It's sad to be unconnected. Wish you could do something. What happened here?
You do not know the history of this land.
Not this part of the history, no.
I want to check for vibes.
For vibes.
Vibes.
Detect vibes?
Detect vibes. I want to Lebowski this
You
place.
walk into a room and know where people have had sex.
Hey, we back. All right, so the decision has been made. I am cooking dinner, but I'm cooking it in the oven, which just means that I will have to go in about 9 minutes to turn what's in the oven. And that is that on that. What's up, warrior?
Chapter 27. They did not know what else to do, so they made their way into the city and back to the academy. The dock gates stood open, as constables had been summoned to inspect the corpse, and so they entered without trouble. Before they returned to the citadel, Theron took them to the inn where Lilith kept her extra room. Mako waited on the street as they ducked within. At the door to the room, she produced a key from around her neck, hanging on the same chain as Kekit's amulet. "I had the key before, you know," she said, looking embarrassed and refusing to meet the eyes of either Eben or Caleb. "Before we were estranged. She only recently gave me one again, in case we should need it for something like this." "Of course," said Eben carefully. She let them in and showed them where Lilith kept extra sets of Academy student robes. Soon they had changed, and Mako led them on through the streets. Curfew was a distant memory, and so he took them around the Academy's east end to the groundskeeper's sheds that housed his secret entrance. "I must cover your eyes," he said, looking at Theron and Caleb. Theron scowled. "Why? I can keep a secret as well as the next." "It is not yours to know, much less to keep," said Mako. "It is bad enough Eben knows how I get in and out. No others need the knowledge." He took rags from the sheds and tied them around their eyes, and then he and Eben led Theron and Caleb into one of the sheds. Inside, Mako had Eben turn around while he pulled a lever, and the secret way opened before them. The passageway was utterly dark, and Eben did not know how Mako could see, yet he must have been able to, for soon he opened the door at the other end of it, and they stood upon the Academy grounds.
Are you making dinner?
Yep, it's cooking in the oven right now.
"I suggest you rest well," said Mako. "Doubtless I shall see you all again soon." "Thank you, Mako," said Eben. "Though some things are unclear, it seems at least that this is all over." Mako gave him a hard look. "I hope you are right, though I doubt it." He left them. Eben and his friends made their way into the academy. It was far too late to be wandering the halls, but they encountered no instructors. Soon they had climbed the stairs to their dormitories. They stopped at Caleb's, where the common room was empty, for the younger children had gone to bed. A fire burned low in the hearth. Eben threw 2 more logs on, and then they sat in armchairs around it. "I cannot fathom all that has happened," said Caleb. "There seems no sense to it." "Isra at least is dead," said Theron. "I can worry about the rest of it another day." "Is she, though?" said Eben. "That corpse was long decayed from seawater. We all saw it, Theron."
That's right.
Theron threw her hands towards the ceiling. "What then does it mean? Has she been a walking corpse for the last month? We have seen her alive, and tonight we saw her dead. Mayhap you guessed wrong, and thought the body more decayed than it was." "Her clothes were rotten, and fish had begun to eat her," said Eben. "Mayhap we are wrong in another sense," said Caleb. "Mayhap the corpse was not her, but only someone who looked like her." "You do not believe in such a coincidence any more than I do," said Eben. "We have seen her, studied beside her, and even fought against her. We know what she looked like. It was her body." But then a thought struck him, and he straightened in his seat. "Unless it was not, it could have been a weremage. Think of it. What if she mind-worded a weremage to look just like her, then killed them and threw them into the Great Bay? When the body was recovered, it would cast any investigation away from her." Caleb shook his head. "That is not how therianthropy works. When the wizard dies, they resume their true form." But now it was his turn to look up in realization. "What if the corpse from the bay was Isra, and a weremage has been impersonating her?" Theron looked at him with disdain. "She has used mind magic against us, Caleb. How could she have done that if she was a weremage? No wizard commands more than one branch of magic." The boy's face fell. "Of course," he mumbled. "I should have thought of that." Eben ran the facts through his mind, but he could think of none that made sense. And he knew, too, that he was less able to guess than his friends, for many ways of magic were still strange to him. Either the corpse was Isra's, or it was not. They could not hope to guess at the truth. But either answer brought another, more urgent question. Where was Aaron? If Isra was still alive, doubtless she held the boy in captivity. But if Isra was indeed dead, Was the boy now a captive of the family Yeren? Or had she left him somewhere else entirely? Thoughts of Eren brought thoughts of Zane, and his blood went cold. "One thing is certain," he said at last, speaking quietly against the crackling fire in the hearth. "There will be an investigation now, and we are the only ones who claim to have seen Isra since she disappeared." They all looked at each other. Then Theron rose from her chair and left without a word, making for the halls. Calum left a moment later, stepping through the opposite door that led to his dormitory. But Eben sat there until morning, staring into the fire, exhausted beyond reckoning and yet unable to even think of sleep. It did not take long for the faculty to redouble their investigation. Eben guessed that news must have reached the academy during the night, for the moment he reached Perrin's class, she commanded him to visit the dean. There was no instructor in the hall to walk with him. Eben stood there for a moment, frozen by indecision. He had a tremendous urge to turn the other way, to make for the academy's front doors and leave forever, begging for help from Halab and Mako. They could whisk him away to some forgotten kingdom, or even, mayhap, home to Idris, there to be hidden from all knowledge. But after a time he turned to the right instead, and made his slow way towards Zane's study. He had done nothing wrong, or at least nothing wrong when it came to Isra. He had seen her within the academy. He and his friends had not drowned her in the Great Bay weeks ago. He must cling to that, for it was the truth, and only the truth could save him now, because outside of what he had seen with his own eyes, he was not even certain what the truth was. Zane stood outside his office, but much to Eben's relief, Gia was also there, as was Dasko. Dasko looked somewhat worse for wear. His face was still gaunt, and his eyes roved all about. But his hands were steady, and Eben saw no trace of madness in him, the sickness that came over those who had long been under Mindward.
Okay, off. All right, I gotta go flip the stuff in the oven.
What's the stuff?
Dinner.
What's for dinner?
Fish and chips.
And fries?
And chips are fries. Back in just a few.
That's nice.
This smells weird. I really like it. There is more than one way to honor the body of a hero. There's a place where you can burn the remains to an ash and something unusual springs forth. everything that is made there will hold that hero's mark. And this kiln will be the creations as a gift to the All-Hammer to remind him that nature is the origin of material. Somewhere there is a member of the dust in the north, ready to help.
Okay, let's try to wrap this sucker up.
It had faded in him remarkably fast. Eben nodded to the instructor and received a brief jerk of the head in return. "Drayden," said Zane, speaking through gritted teeth, "come with us." He stalked off down the hall. Gia and Dasko followed at a somewhat more sedate pace, with Gia holding out an arm to help Dasko along. Eben decided to match their steps rather than Zane's, and soon the dean was forced to slow. Eben had had scant reason to visit the Academy's healing ward before, but that was where they turned their steps now. It lay on the bottom floor of one of the Citadel's great wings, the one that stretched northwest, and there were many beds arranged in rows, with tall windows that reached from waist height almost to the ceiling. One of the beds nearest the entrance was covered, and Eben saw the shape of a body beneath it. He could smell decay mixed with seawater. Gia paused a respectful distance away, but Zane pushed forwards. Ignoring the healer who stood by to help, he threw back the sheet to reveal Isra's bloated corpse. Removed from the seawater, her skin had turned darker still, and her eyes had swollen into pale, milky globes, the color of which could hardly be discerned. Yet it was still clearly her, as any fool could see. She had been stripped of her clothes and cleaned up. The sight of her almost made Eben retch. "How is it possible," said Zane, "that Isra lies dead before us, when you said you saw her just over a week ago?" His words were calm, but Eben heard the fire burning behind them, hot enough to melt steel. Eben swallowed hard, trying to remember to look shocked, as though he was surprised to see Isra dead. It was not difficult, and he thought the paleness of his skin likely helped. "I do not know," he said. Where was she? Mayhap she died just after we encountered her." The healer, a wizened old woman whose hair was drawn up into a tight bun, shook her head. "This corpse has been in the ocean a month at least," she said. "We inspected it most thoroughly." Zane stalked around the bed to loom over him. "A month. A month ago is about the time she vanished from her classes. And so I ask again, how is it possible that you saw her in the kitchens, Drayden?" "He is not the only one who saw her," said Gia. "I am asking the boy, for it is his words that have been called into question. He can speak for himself, or he can speak with the mystic's encouragement. It matters little to me." "It is just as Gia said," said Eben, feeling somewhat indignant now. "I have not gone mad. My friends saw her as well." Zane glanced over his shoulder. "Mayhap. Yet they too may prove false." Eben heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Calum and Theron being ushered into the room by an instructor he did not recognize. Both their eyes fixed at once upon the corpse on the bed. Calum went elf-white, and Theron did not look much better. "This is the body of a girl you both said you saw here in the Academy," Zane told them. "Yet she has been dead for weeks. How do you explain this? I cannot read the tale of it, unless someone in this room has been lying." Calum tore his eyes away from Isra at last to meet Zane's gaze. "If someone has been lying, it is not I. Not in this. We saw her. Theron fought her." "Yet I thought you said her eyes were black," said Zane, and his baleful gaze turned to Theron. "How could you resist a wizard with the strength of mage stones?" "It is as I said before," said Theron carefully. "We surprised her. I tried to flee, but she turned and ran first." "Clearly there is something at work here," said Gia, her voice calm and measured, and her eyes going too often to Zane. "I am certain the three of you can understand how we would be confused, concerned even. After all, the body casts doubt upon this whole affair." Eben steeled himself. They stood on the brink of the hearth now, and it seemed their only chance was to plunge headlong into the flames. "Of course, Instructor. Yet I can offer no better explanation. And after all, someone had you under mind word, did they not? And you as well, Instructor Dasko, for longer." Theron tensed. Zane saw her sudden discomfort, and his eyes locked upon her. "But Isra was not the only mind mage at the academy," he said. Feigning surprise, Eben looked to Theron. "You mean to insinuate that Theron had something to do with the mind word? I am only recently acquainted with magic, and nowhere near so mighty in my lore as anyone else present." "An understatement, if ever there was one," Zane spat. Eben's nostrils flared, but he pressed on, though anger now burned in his breast. "But even I know that mind word is only possible with mage stones. And if Theron had been using mage stones, her eyes would glow black. Theron, cast a spell." She looked at him uneasily, but a moment later he saw her reach for her magic. Her eyes glowed white, and a nearby tray lifted into the air. "There you have it. Theron has eaten no more mage stones than I have. Or you yourself, Dean," said Eben, chuckling. "You dare to laugh?" roared Zane. Eben flinched as the Dean stepped up to him, but he did not seize Eben's robes, nor reach for his magic. He only loomed, his face a finger from Eben's, until Eben wanted to wilt and sink into the floor. "My son has been kidnapped. My son, you mewling, dung-licking coward, and you dare to laugh? First I am told that this girl, Isra, stole him away. Then you tell me that you saw her but did not stop her before she escaped. Now I see her corpse, and she has been dead, it seems, since she was supposed to have taken him. Laugh again. Laugh, I implore you, for it may very well break me, but I will take you with me when I shatter." Eben fought to reply, but pure terror had seized him. It was all he could do not to flee, and suddenly he had a desperate need for the privy. Everyone in the room stood frozen. But it was Dasko who stepped forwards at last, still shaky on his feet, but with a stern look in his eyes. He put a gentle hand on Zane's shoulder. "Dean Foradar," he said quietly, "no one can begrudge you your wrath, nor your grief, which must be boundless in equal measure. These children are as confused as we are, certainly, and far more frightened, for to their mind they have seen a walking corpse. Eben was flippant in a moment of foolishness. That does not mean he is evil." The instructor's words were gentle, his tone soothing, but Zane did not subside. Rather, Eben saw his eyes go wide. He took a step back as though he was regrouping, collecting himself. "A walking corpse," he whispered. He turned stark eyes on Isra's body. "A walking corpse." Eben knew not what the words meant, what dark thing Zane thought he had discovered, but it only increased his fear. Gia stepped forwards into the sudden, awkward silence. "They should return to class, Dean Foradar, unless we have anything more for them." Zane did not answer. He only turned back towards the body upon the bed. "Out with you," said Gia quickly, brushing them away. They made for the door. She followed them out and around the corner, where she stopped them. Eben was reminded of the last time she had pulled them aside to speak privately, when they had been caught sneaking into the Academy's vaults. "I tire of repeating myself," she said ruefully, "but I must ask you to forgive the Dean. None of us can imagine the pain of losing a son." "Of course, Instructor," said Caleb politely. Theron only stared off into nothing, while Eben was still thinking of Zane's look of dark recognition. "I know he is angry with you, and anger may not always prompt honesty," Gia went on. "So I will ask you once more. Is there anything else you know or have seen that could help? I am afraid there is little hope Aaron is still alive, for we have heard nothing from his captors since he was taken. Yet we must cleave to what little hope remains." That drew Eben's attention. Gia must not know of the ransom note Zane had received. That meant Zane had not told the rest of the faculty. But he only shook his head and muttered, "Nothing, Instructor. I am sorry." Caleb and Theron gave soft words of agreement. She sighed. "Very well. Then I have only one more thing to ask. Eben, please go and see Estrella immediately. I have sent word to Perrin already. She will excuse the two of you. You seem closer to her than most, and so she should hear of this from you." Eben balked, looking back towards the healing ward for a moment. I have no wish to tell her of Isra's death, Instructor." Gia's eyes grew mournful. "Nor have I, Eben. Nor has anyone. But would you rather she hear it from your lips, or as a rumor whispering through the academy halls?" He hung his head. "From me, I suppose. But I do not wish for such a duty." She put a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, Eben. Your compassion has never been lacking, and that is why I keep my faith in you." They left her then and made their silent way through the halls. Eben wondered if his friends, too, felt the presence of the corpse behind them, long after the healing ward was out of sight.
Chapter 27 done. All right, and with that, I have to go. Let's see who we're going to throw a raid to. Okay. Nobody appears to be streaming that I follow. Oh, haha. Because I'm in the wrong Twitch account. I was like, that seems unusual. Oops, not you. Ugh. I really gotta go. Oh, we're gonna raid Mama Samu, who is playing Hades. Go say hi to her for me. Wish her well. I have to go do dinner. Peace out, everyone. Hope you have a great day. Bye.